Can you see it on your end? It should say recording.
Yes, I can. I can see it.
All right now. Okay. So, all right. Welcome back, everybody, to the From Hurt to Healed series. I'm so excited today. I have a dear sister in Christ, Lanita, coming on today. She's going to be talking to us, and she's going to be sharing her story, her testimony, a season in her life where she went from hurt to healed. And I met Lanita online, like via the socials. We were both, doing direct marketing at the time. And, we were both pregnant and having boys. So we just had so much in common. And so we just started talking and developing a relationship. And it just goes to show how much, social media has evolved, and it's allowing, people to come together, like people from completely different areas. Like Lenny is on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, but like we still were able to connect. And I think actually at the time we met, I was living in Japan, so I was in a whole different country. But it was just so great for us to meet in that season. God definitely ordained for it to happen, and I was so excited, to have somebody going through something similar as I was in that season of my life. So Lanita, thank you so much for coming on. Welcome. I'm so excited. Yes, I'm so excited for you to just share your story with the people and kind of tell us, more about you in a season in your life where you went from hurt to heal.
Who? A season? Because I have seasons. Oh my goodness, a season from hurt to healed. Okay, so let me back up and just kind of share a little bit about me and where I am, and just kind of the evolution, because I feel like I'm still in the evolution. But so as my sis Ashley said, I'm Lanita from North Carolina, born and raised. Grew up in a small town called Ayden. Moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Lived there for about 16 years. Currently residing in Columbus, Ohio, with my 3-year-old son, three-nager, who is just the light of my life. But I mean, just even saying that, from where I was born and raised to Charlotte to now, I thought about a lot of different phases and seasons in my life, and evolutions, as sis says, baby phases and growing and healing and getting to a certain place, and then something else happening in your life, and you find yourself back at that baby stage again, trying to relearn yourself, trying to learn how to cope with a certain situation, or trying to learn how to heal in something that's new to you. And I liken healing to what do I want to liken healing to? And maybe I'm going to say something that's probably not very popular, because I feel like even when we heal, we are still going through phases of healing throughout our life, because we can have an experience in our life that is very traumatic to us, or very hurtful to us, or really put us in a really dark place. And then we go through those years where God is working through us, touching our hearts, healing our minds, restoring our hearts, restoring our minds, just kind of retransforming our minds. And then you may have a day triggered where you realize you thought you were healed in that area, and you still have a little pain there, or you still have that scar there. And so I thought about a time when I was being chased by a dog, and I don't even think the dog was really chasing me, but I was running from the dog. But so he ended up chasing me, running from the dog, ran into this crate and went airborne, fell, hit myself, and have this huge scratch on my leg. And the scar is still there. This happened when I was in high school. I'm about to be 37. So the scar is still very present, very evident. And I call it my battle wound. And it's funny because it's like the most obvious scar that I have on my body, on my leg. And so I look at that scar and I'm like, the scar is healed, but it's still there. And I still see the scar. So I'm still reminded of what happened for me to get that scar. Okay. Right. So even as we heal and we go through this process, this transformation, this evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout our lives, we are still reminded of times that led us to a certain situation where we had to be healed. And so, I wanted to say that healing for me hasn't been, I got through this and I'm finally free from it. And I don't have any feelings towards it again,
mm-hmm.
because I am reminded throughout life in different situations of times when I was very hurt.
Yeah.
So too many specific situations. So I can talk about a situation that led to basically my life and my purpose. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know this, you may know this. Mm-hmm. I've been transparent about this like pretty much since like 2009 when I started my ministry, Restoring the Heart, where that came from. Do you even know?
I know a little bit about Restoring My Heart, but I've never even heard the story, y'all. So y'all getting the good.
Oh, okay. And this is funny. I've not shared this story in years. This is a story that I've shared many times. I've been very transparent about it. I've ministered to a lot of women, known and unknown, over the years. I actually volunteered and did a lot of ministry through a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And this story is not a popular topic, but it's a relevant topic because a lot of women have been where I am and they have probably never told anyone and will never tell anyone. Mm-hmm. But I'm thankful to God that was probably one of the darkest, lowest points of my life. Mm-hmm. And seeing that evolution mm-hmm. from being the baby in that to finally getting to a place where I am healed, where I can talk about it without crying or without getting sad or without getting depressed or without thinking about specific moments and getting really down. And I can really share what the Lord did for me and how I got through that. So, and I'll make this story short because it's a lot. It's pretty loaded, but I was a sophomore in college. I met my childhood boyfriend when I was in middle school. Mm-hmm. So technically I had a boyfriend when I was 12. People were like, you dating at 12. I had a boyfriend at 12. Okay? Call it what you want, but I had a boyfriend at 12, and me and this boyfriend dated until I was 18 years old. So for about 6 years, it was the only person that I, was talking to and with. So moving forward from 12 to 15, when I was 15, sophomore in high school, I was cheering on the basketball team, just being a typical 15-year-old. But me and this guy had become sexually involved with each other. Okay. So during that time, young, naive, wasn't in church, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just kind of giving some background here. I wasn't in church, didn't know God. Mm-hmm. Just a little 15-year out here doing 15-year-old things and being grown with my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. So at that time, I became pregnant. I didn't even know that I was pregnant. Like, I was cheering, my skirt was getting all tight and just not even really thinking about anything. Like, mm-hmm. I don't even know what sparked it. I believe my mom or someone asked me, "Are you pregnant?" Which I thought was really odd. Mm-hmm. Because me being in my body so immature and 15, I didn't even know that my body was changing. Mm-hmm. I hadn't even paid attention to it. Yeah. And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And so I brought it up to my boyfriend at the time. We got all these pregnancy tests, took probably about 10 of them. They were all positive. I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Mm-hmm. Craziest thing, I can't even really remember all the details that led up to what happened after that. But I remember I was underage. I didn't want to tell my mom. So I was like, how do I, we were like, what are we going to do? We're going to have this baby. We're going to have an abortion. And I think I don't even really remember the whole conversation, but we finally made the decision that I would have an abortion. Mm-hmm. I did not want to tell my mother. And so I found some way, still don't remember how that happened this day, to get a judicial bypass. Mm-hmm. Which meant that I was able to go before a judge. And like, it's so funny when I talk to someone, like, how did I even do this back then? Yeah. Like, this was like in the 90s. Like, it's wild. I got a judicial bypass, spoke to a judge or magistrate or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they asked me all these questions, do you know what you're doing? Are you mature enough to handle this? Do you understand like the psychological implications or whatever that may come from this. And I'm like, yeah. Like, what I need to do, get me out of here so I can go. Okay.
Yeah.
So they gave me this judicial bypass. It was a piece of paper that I would take to the abortion clinic, basically saying that I had permission to have an abortion without parental consent. Blows my mind that that is even a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Like 15. I was a kid. So that's crazy. So fast forward, abortion was done, and it was like almost immediately, not even having a relationship with God, but almost immediately it was like, I imagine how Adam and Eve were in the garden when they, you know, sinned, and then they finally, their eyes were open. It was like, oh my God, I did something horrible. Like, what did I just do? And that spurred me to a downward spiral that, eventually led to just like physical abuse, like domestic violence within the relationship. A teenager just going through that, having experienced an abortion, that loss, becoming deeply, deeply saddened and regretful, ashamed, and just so sorry for what I had done, because I'm like, I love kids and I just took my own child's life here, And so that led to other things, just becoming depressed. Again, domestic violence. Got out of that. Me and him ended up breaking up when I was about 18 years old. I got to a point where I was just like, I can't take this anymore. The abuse was, the verbal, the mental, the psychological, like it was just becoming too much. And I'm like, I am way too young to be going through this and have experienced so much in this time that very few people knew about. And so after I broke up with him, it was like, okay, I'm graduating from high school. I'm still dealing with that rejection, that pain, that abandonment, not even knowing who I was, trying to find myself, going into the world as an adult now, having experienced all those things as a child, not to mention other childhood traumas that were, I dealt with absent father and stuff. And so I'm just like, man, I get out here wilding out, drinking, like toe up, passed out every weekend, got a ticket for drinking underage in a club when I was 18, just really trying to figure out who I was and find myself through people, specifically through men, because I had been rejected so much through, from my ex-boyfriend. It was like, okay, so certainly somebody gonna show me what love look like out here, like how you really love me. So got involved sexually with a few guys. That just really turned into like what the next few years of my life would look like. Just promiscuity and trying to find myself in men, trying to heal a hurt that I thought I would be healed through a man, someone loving me, someone, caring for me. And it was just cycles and cycles and cycles of hurt, disappointment, rejection, abandonment. And I just was like, okay. And so I did start going to church, got saved probably somewhere in that time, like 18, 19, but I wasn't really sure like what I was doing. I just knew that I had this strong calling. Like, I didn't go to church. I knew God. I knew of God. I didn't know God. And I wanted to know him. I wanted to know what it felt like to have a relationship with God and to experience what people say they experience when they are saved. So I did go through that period in my life. I, got saved, started going to church. That's when I really started trying to deal with all of that pain that I had suppressed and had acted out on. And I was like, so what does this look like for me? So got heavily involved in church, heavily involved in ministry, went back to school, got involved in school, got to a place in school when I was dating a guy in Charlotte, great guy, still is a phenomenal guy. We're not together, obviously, but great guy. He really, really pushed me to my full potential. He really pushed me into Christ and to my relationship with Christ. He really poured into me, and in that relationship is where I found my purpose in life. It's where I found that whole experience that I had gone through as a child, even in my young, and even leading up into my young adulthood, was preparing me for what God was going to do in my life. And so it's funny because we say all things happen for a reason. And I heard somebody say, well, why would God make you go through all of that, for a reason? Like, what will be the reason for that? And I'm like, unless you've experienced God, unless you've had an encounter with God and know what it feels like to cry out to him and to finally have some peace, not even necessarily healed yet, but to finally get to a place of peace in God, right? You wouldn't understand what that means. That's true. And so I had gotten to that point where I was at peace, but I really, really, really needed to be healed. I really, really needed to know that God had forgiven me, like really forgiven me for committing that sin of abortion and the sins of promiscuity and all the other stuff that I was doing, getting drunk and stuff. And so I sought God, really went to him in prayer. I did a post-abortion Bible study that really made me dig deep into that time in my life and heal even more. And that was very beneficial for me. And like I said, it catapulted me, into my purpose, where I started hosting forums for what would eventually become Restoring the Heart, my ministry. And all of that was healing. So again, not being fully healed, like I'm healing along the way as God is leading me to now start helping other people through what I've been through. And like one of the scriptures the scripture that I basically found in that ministry on Restoring the Heart, and that I just have held so dear to my life because I know it to be true. Psalms 34:18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and heals those who are crushed in spirit. And that became like the foundation for my life, for my mission, for my purpose, because I experienced what it was like to be brokenhearted. I experienced what it was to be crushed in spirit, and I experienced what it felt like for the Lord to be near to me during those times. When I started drawing near to him. And so again, started doing forums in a church, started bringing young ladies out. We were discussing some really hard stuff and hard topics, leading these ladies to God and what the scripture says about it, and helping them heal through their trauma as young women so that they wouldn't get to in their 20s and 30s and are still trying to deal with these things. And so from there, I started, that was 2009, I founded the ministry. The Lord allowed me to do great works through that, speaking in churches, conferences, panels, you name it, podcasts. Like I was doing everything. Was doing great work in the community with some schools and helping like young moms, and just really, really operating fully in my calling and helping other women get through some really difficult times and tough times, and leading them to the Lord, leading them to scripture, leading Bible studies, and just trying to bring women together to understand that, I don't believe in time heals all wounds, because time does not heal all wounds. You have to deal with that stuff. Okay. You got to deal with it. Because time ain't doing nothing but passing, and you still are feeling the same way you felt, and you haven't dealt with it. So dealt with that through counseling, dealt with that through prayer, through Bible study, through a group, through whatever. You got to deal with it. Because it really does not just go away. And I think a lot of us as adults are now, us millennials or something, like, we're really starting to tap into what healing really looks like, because our parents didn't take the time to address their trauma, their childhood traumas. Our parents did not take the time to go to counseling and heal from whatever stuff they went through in their childhood and their teen years. And I'm like, I'm talking to my mom, like, man, she went through a lot. And to know that wasn't saying I need to be healed wasn't a thing. Saying I need to get into counseling wasn't a thing for baby boomers. But here we are, us millennials, and we're taking this thing by force. Like we really want to be healed. We don't want to grow up and raise kids and still are being triggered and having these moments where we're still reliving these painful moments in our lives, and we're putting that off on our kids because we haven't dealt with it ourselves. And so that was important for me. I didn't think I would have children. I wasn't planning to have children, but when I did have my son, I knew that I absolutely did not want him to, I didn't want to raise him in a way, in an unhealed state, and in a mindset where I was still dealing with crap and putting it on him that it's not fair to him.
Yeah.
And so I just know for me, like I said, healing is an ongoing thing. And you could have a moment where you, like me, I can talk about what I went through as a teenager and not, be over here boo-hoo crying, but I can still be triggered when I see someone making light of a situation like that, of a young girl who, you see her out here with a little skirt on and she out here drunk, and you're like, look at this little girl, she had to be ashamed of herself, not even knowing why she's doing that.
What's the root?
And what was the root of that?
Yeah.
And I had to check myself, because I was like, I felt like I got to a point in my spirituality where I could be like, well, shame on you. You gotta stop doing this and stop doing that. And I'm like, no, honey, because you were a hot mess for a long time. And you don't have room to talk about nobody. And so I've had those moments, and I still have those moments where I think about times in my life that were very painful and very hurtful. And like that scar on my leg, I still see it. It's still there. It's still very visible. But how I deal with it now is what makes the difference, as opposed to before, not having dealt with it, lashing out, getting angry, overly emotional. Now I can say, okay, yeah, I went through that, and then this is how I dealt with that, and so being able to help people now, because I've experienced, you said a season. I'm like, man, I got seasons. I can write a Chronicles of Narnia over here about some stuff and healing, honey, because the Lord has done that for me and has really healed my heart. But I'm just thankful because the Lord saw fit to allow me to recognize that I needed to do some inside work. And I am still so far from perfect. I'm still doing the inside work. I'm still doing the dirty work. I'm still transforming my mind daily. And renewing my mind daily, having my heart transformed, and still trying not to allow those past experiences to be a reflection of like my current and future relationships with people.
Right. I agree so much. Like you hit on so many things, like so many things. I love that. Just even starting off, you're like, hey, healing is a process, and I'm still healing to this day. But that didn't prevent you from coming on this platform and sharing your story, because you recognize that I am not who I used to be. But that doesn't mean that I'm perfect. You know what I'm saying? But you recognize the growth that God has, allowed to happen in your life, from who you were at 15, who you were at 21, who you were at 25, to who you are today. You know what I'm saying? It's a continuous process. And I mean, I'm so appreciative for you coming on, because I think that so often people don't deal with it. Like you were saying, they think that if they just continue to bury it or put on some facade that they have it together, that, I'm just going to fake it till I make it. You're never truly going to make it. You know what I'm saying? It may be like,
it comes out in other relationships, and you're right, how you deal with people, like all of that comes out.
It does. And I'm just like, it's so important for people to understand that you are going to have to face it, and you have to take ownership over it. And I think that's a big step, because I think there's a lot of shame around these topics, sexual immorality, in whatever form, whether that's homosexuality, whether, that's, dating outside of marriage or sex outside of marriage, whatever it is. I think that people can be so quick to judge in that state, instead of, saying like, hey, one, none of us are perfect. But two, trying to understand the root of the issue that person is facing. What's really the root, and taking ownership over their story. Because I remember I was praying, and this was back in college, and God was like, you're never going to be who I called you to be unless you own what you've been through, because it's a twofold. You're either going to own it or it's going to own you. So you're either going to take ownership over your struggles, your sin, the things you went through, or the enemy is always going to use that to keep you trapped. You know what I'm saying? He's always going to silence you.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to be like, oh, you know, you're going to be wanting to step on your purpose and speak to somebody who's going through it. But the enemy's going to be like, but remember when you did? And are you really healed from that? Like, he always going to be there to question you. You know what I'm saying? He's always there like, but are you really sure? You know? And it's just so important for you to stand in boldness and stand in the authority that God gave you and be like, you know what? God has forgiven me. I am healed from this. I am not perfect, but I am always evolving and changing. And I'm continuing to see God through everything that I've been through, you know? Everything that I've been through, I'm continuing to seek his face and say, like, okay, Lord, like, help me through this next season, through this next phase. So I think, man, that's so important. And it's true, like, things like therapy and all that was definitely frowned upon in our parents' age, and still can be a stigma, especially in the Black community, about going to therapy.
It still is. Yeah.
I think it's getting better, but I think it's still stigma, like, dang, you going to therapy? You must really be messed. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't.
Oh, but I am, so I'm going.
Yeah,
so
exactly. That's why I'm going. I recognize it. I'm embracing my brokenness. Instead of running from my brokenness, I'm embracing my brokenness. And I'm telling, you know, I'm unashamed to say that I'm going to therapy. I'm unashamed to say I've been to therapy. You know what I'm saying? I definitely had things that I had to work through. And you know, I got married young, had kids young, you know, and there were seasons in my life where I was still trying to figure out, well, who is Ash? You know, who am I? I see my identity was so tied up in being a wife and a mom. And it really left this empty space where it was like, but who am I beyond those things? When people were coming up to me and they were like, well, what do you do for fun? And I was like, well, I like to play with my kids. And they're like, sis, but sis, what do you do for fun? You know what I'm saying?
For you.
And it really hit different because I said, well, I don't think I spent enough time trying to get to know who God created me to be. And I spent most of my time trying to prove I wasn't who I used to be, you know, and that had me clinging and jumping into relationships, you know, because I was like, oh, well, I'm not that person anymore, you know, and God's like, that's not healing, you know,
no, it's not.
Yeah, that's not healing. That's you trying to cover up who you used to be by jumping into something else, you know, and I think that's, you know, people call those rebound relationships, or, you know, when you jump into something else to try to prove that you're not hurt from what just happened or who you used to be. But child, that's a whole, I done been there. I have been there, you know, I have been there. I've definitely had those hurt seasons. And like you said, it's a process. So I'm not going to say that I'm all the way healed, but it's not stopping me from doing the things that God has called me to do. And I think that's what you have to recognize. Okay, healing is a process, but is what you did in the past stopping you? Because if it's stopping you today, if yesterday is stopping you today, then you gotta go back to yesterday and deal with it. Like, face it.
That's right. You gotta deal with it. You really have to deal with it. And that's why, like, I love that you're doing this, because I think that a lot of people, once they hear other people's stories and they're like, oh, I've been through that too. Right. Oh, I can relate to that too. And oh, so that's what, you know, she did. Like, a lot of women don't know that there are post-abortion Bible studies available to them. There are books that they can read that can get them through healing. Because I've met a lot of women who've had abortions and they say, oh, well, I'm fine. I don't care. Like, he ain't do nothing for me, da, 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, in the natural, you're thinking that you're fine, but spiritually, you've reacted to that in a way, in other ways that you may not know were related to what you did. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so we don't realize that a lot of times, a lot of our reactions to things, a lot of the things that we have done and acted upon are a root and are related to experiences that we've had in our life that we think aren't a big deal, because, you know, consciously we're not moved by it. Subconsciously we are, because we've not dealt with it, you know. And so I it's interesting when people say, like, I went through something so traumatic, but it doesn't bother me. Like, I'm okay with it. And I'm like, yes, it's probably not. Like,
Yeah,
I know I hear you, and I'm not trying to take away from what you're saying you feel, but I'm pretty sure if we sat down and we went over your life, we could recall some time that you've done some things, and the root of that action was from
something
the
else.
things you're claiming that's not bothering you, you know, that doesn't have an effect on you. And so for us millennials, and millennial moms now, addressing these things and letting people know that there is help, there are resources available. Like you said, you know, when we spoke before, there's an evolution to healing. There's an evolution to everything we do in our life, even coming to Christ. Like you said, we all come to Christ as babies, and we grow, and we become more spiritually mature. We go from that milk to that meat, and that's the same thing with healing. You deal with it. You recognize that you have a problem, that there's something you've not dealt with. It's like stages of grief. You have to accept it first. You know, it's acceptance. You have to accept it, and then you have to be willing to address it. And you know what that looks like for someone else, I don't know. For me, it was counseling. For me, it was a post-abortion Bible study that allowed me to address those dark, deep places I had just buried and thought were never going to resurrect again. For me, that was healing. For me also was starting a ministry to help other women. Healing for me was also volunteering at a pregnancy resource center that assisted women who were abortion minded and vulnerable, counseling these women, answering emails to women who'd found my website or something from someone else, or seen my podcast or a video, anything. Healing for me was all of those things. The more I talked about what I went through, the more God really freed me from that shame, really freed me from being bound by the enemy and saying, you did that, look at you, you shouldn't have never done that, and you're going to be this and that for life, and this and this and that, and look at you. No, because talking about it is healing. It's freeing. You know, we overcome by the words of our testimony. And that doesn't mean you have to go and shout it on a mountaintop, but you have to be able to open your mouth and say, I went through this hurt me. I'm dealing with this. I want to be free from this. I want to begin my healing and know what life looks like for me on the other side of healing, because I know what life has looked like for me on this side of pain. And it's a process.
It sure is, man. As you were speaking, I was thinking, because I think something that definitely surrounds, you know, anybody who's been through a traumatic experience is shame. Whether they feel like, oh, I did this, I brought this on myself, or, you know, whatever it is. But I think it's shame. Shame is such a huge thing that I think we all go through, especially when we have these traumatic experiences. But like you were saying, I think it really is breaking the silence about what you've been through is a part of breaking the shame. You know, once you break that silence around it, and like you said, you don't have to scream it on the rooftops, whether that's writing a letter to that person who hurt you, whether that's, you know, whether it is getting on a YouTube video, or saying it on a podcast, or, you know, saying it to your pastor, saying it in counseling, breaking the silence in some form is going to break that shame off your life. And I think whoever is listening to this and they're like, you know, I didn't think that abortion, that season of my life, that, you know, sexual immorality, that specific sin, I didn't think that was still hurting. But I think that now through this conversation and through conversations like this, they may realize that, oh, hold on, some of the reactions that I'm having to things that are happening today are a reflection of those things I still haven't dealt with. My reactions are a reflection of me, something going on the inside of me. And so as I am realizing this, as they're realizing this, they're like, okay, I need to do something about that. It's time to break the silence. I think the more we become silent and apathetic towards our past and towards the things that have happened, the more shame piles up on the inside. And God never meant for us to live lives of shame or live in shame. You know, shame is not something he wanted us to live inside of. You know, it's something, it's an emotion, it's something that we walk through, but it's not something that we stay in. And I think if you've made your home in shame, or if you've made your home in you know, being apathetic towards what you've been through, like, oh, that doesn't matter, or, you know what I'm saying? It's time to have that come to Jesus moment. You know what I'm saying? And really have a discussion centered around your hurts. And that's what this series is all about, you know? So I'm so thankful for you coming on and being, you know, transparent. That's why I want people to be more transparent, because I think, like you said, it can help so many people break the shame off their lives if the silence is broken. And we're breaking the silence on here today. And I hope that, you know, people continue to break the silence in their own lives, in their own inner circles, because, you know, as many people as this may reach, there are so many people in the world who need to hear messages like this. And so, you know, we definitely hope that you share this video out so that it can reach the masses of people who may be dealing with something. It doesn't have to be abortion specifically, but if it could be any traumatic experience, you know, and they can relate to this video in some form or fashion. So, you know, anything, look, I just want to, we having such a great conversation. I'm like, girl, anything else you got to say? Go ahead and drop in gems.
I'll just two more things and I'll be done. You know, you spoke on breaking that silence, and breaking that silence leads to, you know, basically punching the enemy in the face. Like, I'm not gonna be ashamed about this no more. Like, I'm about to get off these chains, about to get off me. I've also realized too, sometimes when people share their story, somebody may say, oh, you know, I guess it wasn't so bad because there are people who've been through worse, and or, you know, or somebody may say that to them. Well, why are you acting like that? Like, people been through worse stuff than you. So whether you're saying that to yourself or someone is saying that to you, I had to come to a point where I'm just like, listen, me sharing my story for me to get free is not minimizing what anybody else has been through, even if it was more, but that's relative. Like, what's somebody else has been through more me, you know? And so not allowing those voices of people to minimize what you've been through so that you're stuck where you are. And so many people probably really have tried to be free from that. And then they've talked to people who were not sympathetic or empathetic, or were professionally trained or spiritually inclined, who basically shot them down, like, get over it, you know? But I just want to say, don't minimize your pain and what you've been through because you're trying not to seem like you've been through so much and other people have been through. Yeah, we've all been through something. We're all going through something, big or small, whatever it is. It's my story. And so that's your story. And so for you, it is a big deal. And for you, you still deserve to experience the love of God and the peace of God and what healing is like through God, no matter how big or how small you think that is. And, you know, God, his word, come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Like, come on. It doesn't matter what that looks like. Heavy laden is relative, because heavy laden to me may be the weight and the pain of, and the shame of an abortion. Heavy laden to someone else may be, trying to think of something else that somebody might say isn't as serious as that. But it may be
your dad, you know, if your parent, or you were missing one parent or something.
Like comparing people's pain and comparing people's trauma and trying to minimize someone else's experience as if they still don't need to be healed from that. And I just want to say, whatever that looks like for you and to you, your pain is your pain. Your trauma is your trauma. Your healing is your healing, and you cannot go through that with someone else. You have to really be able to do the hard work and do what it takes for you to get to that place. We know what it's like to live in pain, but a lot of people are faking and really don't know what it's like to live in freedom, of freedom from that past and freedom from those mistakes and that shame and those secrets they're hiding. So just really want to encourage men and women to take the first step and accept. that
Yes.
you've got some stuff you need to deal with.
Yeah.
Because we can all get on social media and post pretty pictures and quotes and scriptures. We can all start ministries. We can all have booming businesses and still on the inside just be so dark and so heavy and go home at night and cry ourselves to sleep. And that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
And the culture we're in now is teaching us to be out in front of people, but it ain't teaching us to heal.
Yeah.
And I don't, I'm like, nah, like you can have the most booming business in the world and be broken on the inside and go home and be depressed as crap. And I've seen it. So deal with it, heal,
deal with it,
evolve,
accept
it, like address the mess. Let's get it. So So
Wow. This was great, Lanita. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your testimony. Can you tell the people where they can find more information about you? I'll make sure to add links and things like that. But if they were like, ooh, Lanita was hit and I need to find her,
Oh Lord, listen, as transparent as I am, and as more transparent as I used to be over the years, I've become a lot more private, but you can still find me on Instagram at Just Lanita, JustLanita. Facebook, Lanita Wilkes. I'm not really too many other places. My website will be back up soon. I'm working on that now for Just Lanita. Also, shameless plug, Beulah Naturals.
Yes, get that elderberry in your
Beulah
life. With COVID going on, you need some of that elderberry.
Yeah, if you need the elderberry syrup, holler at your girl because I got you. So focusing on health and wellness now, and like we said, we both did direct marketing, so I'm trying to figure out what this looks like for me in my realm of business, in my realm of oops, did that disappear? Oh, I think my thing almost went off. My business and stuff. So official Beulah Naturals, you can find that on Instagram. You can find me there too. And that website will be up soon for you guys to order. I'm taking orders until then, but either way, you can find me there. And I'm always here to pray, to talk, to listen. So, yep.
Thank you so much. All right, you guys, until next time, I hope you enjoyed this episode of From Hurt to Heal. God definitely moved. There were so many gems and things. And like I said, just go ahead, share this out to a family member or friend. You never know who in which circle could definitely benefit from just this type of exposure to this type of conversation revolving around healing and the evolution that is in itself. So thank you guys again. God bless you guys. Have an incredible rest of